Okay, so I recently rewatched the Jump Street franchise, and this is going to be my ranking of both of these movies. And just before I go forward, I don't hate either of these movies. I don't think they're bad. I don't dislike either of them. I think they're both perfectly fun and entertaining, action comedies. And I think judging them on those terms alone makes this a very hard ranking because I think each film has its strengths and weaknesses, but the way I approach this ranking and the way I approach any ranking I do on my channel when it comes to, I guess, ranking a franchise is these are the big factors that play in for me is rewatch factor, is the overall filmmaking that is presented. So now, putting that aside, let's go ahead and jump right into it, coming in at the weakest of the two, and that is 21 Jump Street. And now, where my problems come into play with this film is I don't think the story is as strong nor as interesting as its follow up. I think this film has some really boring moments in it. I think some of the humor falls flat. There's a sequence that takes place on a highway, and there's an ongoing joke about an explosion, and it wasn't funny the first time and it wasn't funny the next two times. And you understand it's kind of like a typical, action, genre cliche that they're poking fun at. And and I got that and I really like that aspect. But the joke is like rapid fire. Is it just keeps on coming. And just that entire sequence I think could have been 3 to 4 minutes less, and I think it would have been much better because I think that scene drags on for way too long. And I don't know, it just got to a point for me where it was actually brain numbing to think that we are still on the exact same scene. And then second is I think the reveal in the movie. Like, this movie is a few years old now, so I am going to get into spoilers, but if you haven't seen the Jump Street franchise, go watch them, and then come back to this video because I'm going to be talking about the reveal in this movie. And the reveal in this turns out to be the sports coach, which I understand his motivation, for why he starts this whole kind of drug ring. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't think they explore it all that much. His motivation is like, oh, I don't get a very good salary, which that's like the one line in the movie that I think has actually, what's the word, has actually got better with age, because it's you know the cost of living, cost of food, cost of everything, has gone up, and so it's a lot harder. So I completely see where this guy is coming from, with his motivation, but he's in the movie so little, and his reveal, kind of feels like a slasher killer reveal. And I know that these are two different genres. I know one's action comedy and I know one's, horror, but with horror films, it's always the character that you least suspect. It's always the character that's in the film the less. And that same formula kind of applies over here, where I just don't think his motivation is really all that fleshed out. Um, his, I guess his whole kind of plan, like, being a teacher and, these drugs spreading from school to school, I understand he has kind of people behind the scenes, working for him that kind of does his dirty work, I get all that, but I don't know, maybe just like a few more lines of dialogue just to kind of flesh it out. But he's in the film so little that when the reveal came around, it didn't really make a massive impact on me. And, I can see myself revisiting this movie, every couple of years. And I think it's a really fun movie. I think there's some great chemistry between Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill. I think they work great together. I think Ice Cube, is really good in the film. I think he plays a much smaller role in this than he did in the sequel. But, I do think he's really good. And I think this film does set up for 22 Jump Street, in a really cool way, going from a high school setting to college. I do like that. And now coming in at number 1 is 22 Jump Street. And now this film has always kind of been my favorite, for a few reasons. I think the story here and the overall mystery of the story, I think, has always just been more gravitating towards me. It's always been much more up in the air, where everybody's a suspect, and it's on a campus now, which is a lot bigger. There's more connections this time around, and I think that already makes for a much more interesting story this time around. But also from a visual standpoint, this film looks absolutely amazing. There's a lot of colors that are displayed in the film, especially in the third act. The third act looks great. Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill, I don't think, have been better together than in this film. I think they work, great in this film, if not better in this than 21 Jump Street. What else do I really like? The reveal in this one, I actually didn't mind. I think the humor works really, really well in this. I think this is a really funny sequel, and I think this is one of the rare occasions where the sequel is better than the original. I liked the character relationships and the character dynamics a lot more this time around. Just the idea of a college campus, of like, because everyone in college, would have a tattoo, that's kind of like a stereotype this sequel plays at. And, I think that adds kind of more suspicion in this one as to, I guess, who this movie is poking fingers at. So, I do enjoy that aspect to it. I think Ice Cube plays a much bigger part. I think he's really funny in the film. I think Ice Cube's daughter in the film, I think she is really adorable. I think she plays a really cool part in the film, and I think she really steps up in the third act as being as like Ice Cube kind of passing the torch to her if they did want to make a sequel to this, which, time has told that, there is no 23 Jump Street. But yeah, I just think this is just a much more fast-paced, entertaining, thrilling joyride. And just, I always have a blast with this movie when I put it on, and that is why it is number 1. So yeah, that is my ranking of the Jump Street franchise. If you have seen these movies, let me know down in the comments, what is your ranking for both of these films? Would you be open to seeing a 23 Jump Street? I know their original idea was like a Men in Black and Jump Street crossover, which, yeah, I'm kind of glad that didn't happen. But would you be open to a 23 Jump Street sequel? And one more thing I want to add before I wrap up this video. This has the best and the greatest after credit sequence I have ever seen in any movie, and it is great. It is hilarious. It had me laughing, and it's one of the greatest things I have seen in cinema, and one of the most creative ways of kind of poking fun at the sequelitis of a lot of franchises. So I really like that. Yeah, this film is just a lot of fun. So let me know your ranking down in the comment section down below.